All right, let's just be honest for a sec. Math. For a lot of us, it can sometimes feel like you're trying to grasp smoke.
Oh, absolutely. That feeling is very common.
Especially, when you hit those abstract concepts. Like, what is an integral really doing? Or how does some complex algebraic thing connect to a shape on a graph? It just feels slippery.
Yeah, it's hard to get a mental handle on it sometimes.
But what if there was this powerful digital toolkit, something that could make those tricky mathematical ideas suddenly kind of click into place?
That's a great lead-in.
Because that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're looking at this really fascinating piece of software called GeoGebra and how it's starting to shake things up in math education. Could this tool really change how we understand math?
And we've got a great source for this deep dive. It's a systematic review of journal articles, basically looking at everything published between 2010 and 2020, specifically about using GeoGebra in math education.
Okay, systematic review. Sounds serious. What does that actually mean in plain English?
Right, good question. Think of it like the ultimate detective work for researchers. It's not just glancing at a few studies. It's this super thorough, planned investigation. It pulls together all the relevant research on GeoGebra, sifts through it methodically, and aims to give us the clearest possible picture of what's been studied, what we've learned, and, what the overall evidence says.
Gotcha. So it cuts through the noise, gives us the big picture.
Exactly. It's designed for clarity.
Okay, perfect. So our mission today.
Mm.
Let's unpack what this huge review tells us.
Yeah.
How has GeoGebra actually been used? What seems to work? Maybe what doesn't? And are there surprising gaps? Things we haven't explored enough?
That's the plan.
Right. Let's dig in. Maybe find some hidden gems for anyone out there looking to make math feel a bit less like smoke and more, well, solid. So first things first, for anyone who hasn't come across it, what exactly is GeoGebra?
Yeah, fundamental question. So at its heart, GeoGebra is what's called a dynamic geometric software, or DGS for short.
DGS, okay. Dynamic geometry.
Right. But the really unique thing, its superpower, is that it mixes those DGS abilities with something called a computer algebra system, or CAS.
Algebra system. So, like solving equations.
Exactly. It bundles the geometry drawing shapes, moving points with the algebra calculations, equations, functions, all into one single package. It's pretty neat.
Wow.
And what's also fantastic is that it's open source, meaning it's free. Anyone can use it. Plus, it supports over 50 languages, and it's designed to be pretty user-friendly, even with all that power.
Free and powerful. Nice combo.
Definitely. And its main benefit, it really bridges that gap between geometry and algebra that can be so tough. It allows for dynamic visualizations.
Dynamic visualizations, meaning?
Meaning you can literally grab a point on a graph and drag it, or tweak a slider that controls a variable, and you instantly see how the shape changes and how the equation connected to it changes at the same time.
I see. So it connects the picture to the symbols.
Precisely. You could think of it like a digital sandbox for math. You build things, you play around, you see what happens immediately. Or maybe like a Swiss Army knife for math. Lots of tools in one place.
That makes so much sense. Because the abstract nature of math, that's the big hurdle, isn't it? You can't physically hold a derivative.
Right. You can't touch an algorithm.
But if GeoGebra makes it tangible, interactive, that feels like it could be a huge deal for learning, helping with critical thinking, problem solving, all that stuff vital for STEM education.
Absolutely. That's the potential.
Okay, so we know what it is, what it can do. Let's get into what this big review actually found.
Yeah.
You said it looked at a decade of research, trends, where studies happened, who was involved, what math topics, and importantly, how teachers and students were using GeoGebra.
Yeah, they sliced the data in quite a few ways.
So what about the trends? Did interest in studying GeoGebra grow over that decade?
It did, but it was a bit of a slow burn initially. The review found, maybe surprisingly, no studies published in 2010 or 2011. Zero.
Really?
Yep.
Not at all.
None that met their criteria. Then, from 2012 to 2016, it was sort of a slow, steady trickle. But then, boom, from 2017 to 2020, the number of publications basically doubled compared to the earlier period.
Wow. Okay. So a real acceleration towards the end of that decade.
Yeah, clear momentum. It shows growing academic interest, people realizing its potential and starting to research it seriously.
And where was this research happening? Was it global or concentrated somewhere?
Now, this part is really interesting, looking at the global spread, or maybe the lack of spread. The review found that Turkey actually published the most papers. 9 studies came from Turkey.
Turkey, out in front. That's definitely not what I would have guessed.
Me neither initially. After Turkey, you had Israel, South Africa, Malaysia, and Serbia with 2 studies each, and then a bunch of countries with just 1 each. Germany, the UK, Saudi Arabia, Hungary, Slovenia, Spain, Portugal, Sweden.
Okay, so Turkey with 9, and then everyone else way behind with just 1 or 2. Why Turkey? What was going on there?
It's a great question, and the review gives us a clue. It seems Turkey's Ministry of National Education made a conscious push. They actively suggested schools incorporate dynamic math software and ICT, that's information and communication tech, into the curriculum.
Ah, top-down initiative.
Exactly. Apparently, this came after they analyzed their PISA results, those big international tests comparing student performance.
Right, PISA scores.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Turkish students were scoring below the international average in math. So the government basically said, okay, we need to try new things. Let's encourage tools like this, which created a really fertile environment for research into things like GeoGebra.
That makes sense. Policy driving research.
It does, but here's the slightly ironic part. GeoGebra is open source, free, used in something like 180 countries, huge international community, yet the research on its impact is coming from relatively few places. It really shows how much local policies can shape where the research happens.
Fascinating. A real policy effect there. Okay, so moving from where to what parts of math was GeoGebra being used for most in these studies? Geometry, algebra, calculus.
Well, you hit the big ones. The reviews showed the majority of studies, 11 out of the 25 they analyzed, focused on geometry.
Makes sense, given the name in it being a DGS.
Totally. Then next up was analysis, which is basically calculus and related topics with 9 papers, and then discrete mathematics and algebra had 5 papers.
So mostly those areas often seen as more abstract.
Exactly, and that's where GeoGebra's multiple representation feature really shines. It can show you the algebraic formula, the graph, maybe even a table of values, all linked together, all updating in real time. It just makes those abstract connections visible.
That visualization seems key.
It is, but interestingly, the review pointed out a gap here.
Oh, what was missing?
Well, very few studies looked at using GeoGebra for, say, challenging primary school topics, things like fractions or ratios, or even foundational pre-calculus concepts.
That is surprising. You'd think visualization would be great for fractions.
You would. It seems like a missed opportunity. Maybe we focus too much on using these tools for the hard stuff later on, and neglect how powerful they could be for building a really strong foundation earlier. That visual intuition could prevent struggles down the line.
That's a really important point. So, okay, that's the what. What about the how? What teaching strategies were people using with GeoGebra?
Overwhelmingly, the dominant strategy was activity-based learning. That showed up in 18 out of the 25 studies.
Activity-based. So, learning by doing.
Exactly. Students weren't just watching the teacher use it. They were given tasks, problems to solve, where they had to actively use GeoGebra, manipulate objects, drag points, use the sliders, explore, and see the immediate feedback. That dynamic interaction is central.
Makes sense. Let the students play in that digital sandbox.
Right. Now, there's a little nuance here. Within that activity-based approach, about 9 studies involved students working individually.
Okay, individual exploration.
Which can be good. But the review also noted that a lot of other research, maybe not specific to GeoGebra, but about tech in classrooms, generally suggests that collaborative learning often works better.
Working in groups.
Yeah, small groups. Using the tech together, discussing the problems, maybe using strategies like think, pair, share, where you think alone, then discuss with partner, then share with the group. That social interaction, talking through the math, seems to add a lot of value compared to just working solo on a computer.
That makes intuitive sense, bouncing ideas off each other.
For sure. And speaking of strategies, here's another kind of surprising gap the review found.
Okay, what now?
Project-based learning, or PJBL.
Like longer-term projects solving bigger problems.
Exactly. It's known for really boosting higher-order thinking skills, critical thinking, creativity, applying knowledge to complex situations. But guess what?
Let me guess. Not used much.
Not used at all in any of the 25 studies they reviewed. 0.
Wow. That seems like a massive missed opportunity, especially with a tool as versatile as GeoGebra sounds.
It really does. Its potential for supporting deep, project-based explorations seems largely untapped, at least in the research from that decade.
Okay, so it's not just what tool, but really how we use it. Activity-based is common, but maybe more collaboration and definitely project-based learning are needed.
Got it. Now let's shift gears slightly. How did the researchers actually study these things? What kinds of methods did they use? And what aspects of student learning did they focus on?
Good questions. Method-wise, the most common approach was quantitative research. That made up 44% of the studies.
Quantitative, so numbers, stats, measuring performance, test scores.
Exactly. Empirical studies looking for measurable effects on things like achievement. But there was also a decent showing, 20%, for something called design-based research, or DBR. DBR, haven't heard that one as much.
Yeah, it's a really interesting approach. It's more practical, more iterative. Researchers work directly in classrooms, collaborating with teachers, developing and testing educational practices or tools like GeoGebra, and then refining them based on what happens in that real-world setting. It tries to bridge the gap between theory and messy classroom reality.
That sounds really valuable, testing things in the wild, basically.
Pretty much. Now, here's where it gets interesting again, highlighting another omission.
Okay, I'm sensing a theme of omissions.
Yeah, there are a few. Mixed methods research, combining both quantitative data, the numbers, and qualitative data, like interviews, observations, understanding the why, was hardly used. Only 8% of studies.
Only 8%? That seems low. You'd want both perspectives, wouldn't you?
You'd think so to get a richer picture. And what's even more striking, those few mixed method studies, none of them took place in primary or lower secondary school.
So for younger kids, we basically have no studies combining performance data with, say, interviews about their experience using the tool.
According to this review, no. We're missing those deeper qualitative insights, especially for the early years. We might know a score has changed, but not how the kids felt about it or what specifically they found helpful or confusing.
Wow. Okay. And who were the participants in these studies generally? Mostly older students?
Yes, overwhelmingly. Most studies focus on upper secondary, like high school and higher education students, university level.
And again, very few with younger kids. Primary or lower secondary.
Very few. Which connects back to that lack of mixed methods research in those grades. One reason the source suggested for this gap, it might be a lack of adequate teacher training for using tools like GeoGebra effectively with younger age groups.
The teacher training aspect. That makes sense if teachers aren't comfortable.
Exactly. They're less likely to bring it into the classroom unless research happens there.
Right. So finally, what specific learning outcomes were researchers looking at? Performance, attitude, skills.
They mostly frame this using Bloom's revised taxonomy. It's a common framework in education that looks at different learning domains: cognitive, affective, psychomotor.
Okay, break those down for us. Cognitive is.
Cognitive is about thinking. So learning performance, understanding concepts, problem solving, and those higher order thinking skills like analysis, synthesis, evaluation. This was the biggest focus. About 71% of the issues studied fell here.
And the results there. Generally positive.
Generally, yes. The studies tended to show that using GeoGebra had positive effects on these cognitive aspects. It seemed to help students perform better and think more deeply.
Okay, good. What about effective?
Affective is about feelings, emotions, attitudes. So researchers looked at student attitudes towards math, their opinions of learning with GeoGebra, motivation, satisfaction. This was about 26% of the focus.
And students like using it.
Overwhelmingly, yes. The findings here were largely positive. Students reported liking learning with GeoGebra, finding it more engaging or enjoyable, which is really interesting because sometimes this positive feeling didn't necessarily lead to statistically huge gains in test scores compared to control groups.
So they liked it, even if it didn't always make them ace the test.
Kind of. It suggests GeoGebra can definitely improve the experience of learning math, making it less daunting, more appealing, which is valuable in itself, right?
Absolutely. Reducing math anxiety alone would be huge. And the last one, psychomotor.
Psychomotor relates to physical skills, coordination. In this context, maybe things like spatial reasoning, manipulating the digital objects effectively. This got very little attention, only about 3% of the research issues.
Okay, so mostly cognitive, then affective, very little psychomotor.
Right. But connecting all this back, the review really hammered home some crucial missing pieces in what researchers are looking at.
What gaps? Lay 'em on me.
Okay, 3 big ones they highlighted. First, very little or no research on cognitive load.
Cognitive load. Like how much mental effort it takes, how hard your brain has to work.
Exactly. We've all felt that brain-fried feeling when math gets too complex, right?
Yeah.
Is GeoGebra helping reduce that load because it visualizes things? Or does learning the tool itself add more load initially? We just don't have much research on that.
That seems critical, especially for math.
Totally. Second, related to that, very little on learning anxiety. Math anxiety is a huge barrier for so many people. Does using a tool like GeoGebra help reduce that dread? Or does the tech itself cause anxiety for some? Again, largely unexplored in these studies.
Yeah. Okay, number 3.
Engagement. And not just are they paying attention, but engagement in its different forms. Cognitive engagement, are they thinking deeply? Social engagement, are they interacting? Affective engagement, are they interested, invested? And behavioral engagement, are they participating actively? The research hasn't really dug into these different facets of engagement with GeoGebra.
So it's like we know it can boost scores sometimes, and kids tend to like it, but we're missing a huge part of the picture about the process of learning. The mental effort, the anxiety, the actual depth of engagement.
That's a perfect way to put it. We're seeing outcomes, but not fully understanding the underlying psychological experience for the learners.
Man, that's incredibly insightful.
Yeah.
So bringing it all together, GeoGebra clearly have this amazing potential, right? Making abstract math visible, interactive, especially with that dynamic visualization and the activity-based learning.
For sure, the potential is undeniable. It offers a way to interact with math concepts that just wasn't possible before.
Oh, yeah.
But as the review powerfully highlights, there are these big gaps. We need broader research, more countries involved beyond just Turkey and a few others. We absolutely need to explore things like project-based learning. That seems like a huge untapped area.
And definitely more focus on younger kids.
Definitely. More studies in primary and lower secondary. Finding out how to best use it there could be revolutionary for preventing math struggles later on. And crucially, we need research that dives into those psychological aspects: cognitive load, anxiety, real engagement.
And you mentioned teacher training earlier.
Yes, that underpins so much of this. Teachers need support. They need what's called technological pedagogical content knowledge, or TPC. That's a mouthful, I know.
TPC, break it down.
It means teachers need to know more than just the tech, GeoGebra, the pedagogy, how to teach, and the content, the math. They need to understand how all three interact, how to use this specific technology effectively to teach this specific math concept. That integrated knowledge is key for successful implementation.
Right, it's the combination that matters. Not just knowing the tool, but knowing how to teach with the tool.
Precisely.
So let's leave our listeners with this thought. Imagine a future where learning math isn't that struggle, not like grasping smoke, but more like an exciting visual exploration. Given everything we've just discussed, what surprising breakthroughs or discoveries in math education do you think could happen if researchers really leaned into these overlooked areas? If they focused on younger learners, project-based learning, cognitive load, anxiety, engagement, what could unlocking GeoGebra's full potential really look like?
It's exciting to think about. Maybe truly personalized learning paths based on cognitive load feedback, or using it collaboratively to tackle real-world community problems in project-based learning. The possibilities feel vast if we address those gaps.
So what does this all mean for your journey to being well-informed? It means, as always, that the story is often more complex than it first appears. And sometimes the most important knowledge comes not just from the answers we have, but from understanding the questions we haven't yet asked. There's always more to explore.